Dr. Jazz. Dr. Jazz.
Yeah, thank you. But I will just jump in. I wanted to ask you this. I listened to, during this kind of lockdown, lots of these streams happening or recorded concerts. And there was this thing you did on Roulette with Tom Rainey, the duo. And I saw it the other day. Yeah. The whole thing is there. And it's beautiful to hear you and Tom just in,
Yeah.
going there. And Tom is a monster for that as well, like just playing free. And
thank you.
How did you approach that one? And how do you, you've done so many records of composed music and of course through improvised music, but how do you approach like a open free duo concert, let's say, usually?
Well, that's the first time we did that. And and I'm not even sure, we might have played in some other situation years ago. But really it's not bringing any preconceived ideas in. And Tom, I trust Tom. He's the same way. He understands that. I mean, you really get to know the players in all over the world, but from playing with them and how they speak about their music and whatnot. And I know Tom to be one of those people to bring in no preconceived ideas or anything. And I'm the same way, and a lot of musicians are. And you want to improvise with those musicians usually. So,
yeah.
I mean, there was no talking about it beforehand, like let's go in this direction or that direction. We just played with all the information we had up to that point, and I bounced off him a little bit. He bounced off me some, and we, for me, improvising is like that. You can communicate directly with each other, or you can go in two separate paths. And generally, if you just trust the space and musicians that you're with, it'll work out. So
yeah. But is there like a, we all improvise, and you've been doing this for 50 years, and
you had to say that.
Yeah.
All right.
But
oh, you're right though. Yeah.
But which is amazing. That's incredible, right? I mean, like in the most positive way. But like, how do you avoid, or are there moments still, or were there, where you're like on stage and you have a block where to go, or how do you solve these moments when freely improvising, if you have those? I mean, how do you solve this? I mean,
They do come, occasionally they come now, but I actually asked that question of Cooper Moore, the piano player.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Oh, really? Oh, wow.
Yeah, and he said, just keep going. And he's right. There's not much you can do, it just try a different path. If it's not working, or you feel the other musician or musicians aren't listening to you, or you just got to keep going and just find a way. I mean, that's what improvising is all about. Just if this track is not working, make a right-hand turn and go up the street that way. So
yeah,
that's what you got to do. I mean, and that's also a good lesson for you too.
Yeah.
Because it could be you that's blocking the whole thing up also. You got to get out of your way, just get out of your mental way and do it. So
yeah, and it's so important, like to let yourself free. And it's sometimes sometimes when I improvise, I get stuck. I feel like as if I play something that I already played. I get that feeling like, and how to get rid of that. Maybe it's not even bad, I guess, but like for me, sometimes when I improvise, I'm like, I'm again in that zone,
Yeah. Sometimes you just got to get out of your comfort zone, and you start recognizing something you're playing, and then just what I tend to do is I throw out a big blatty sound, just like one big note, blap, out into the stratosphere. And sometimes that starts other things bubbling again, with the other musicians and myself. And you just find something else to do. I mean, I also meditate for meditating since I'm like, 18, 19 years old.
Wow.
So that helps, but it's really about trusting what you already know and that you're going to react. I mean, you improvise every day, and you go out crossing the street. Do I cross the street now or should I wait for the green light?
True.
And usually in New York, you should wait for the green light, but nobody does anyway. So,
oh, sure.
But you're making those decisions all the time. Do I buy low-fat milk or whatever? So.
Yeah, true. Otherwise, I saw you're preparing a new project. Like, I listened to the Bartok project and the Messiaen on silk art, which are beautiful. I love that.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I've read you're preparing a new one with Berio, Luciano Berio, and
well, it's just out now. It's just out.
Oh.
It just came out, so it's available on Silk Art, of course, and also Silk Art and Rogart are working together now, so you can get it on Rogart from France.
Oh,
that side really? As well.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh, wow, super.
Yeah. I've been very. It's been challenging but interesting, and it kind of pushing me in a place that I kind of wanted to go. And Lars Olaf Gustafsson, the Silk Art label owner, approached me about the first one, about the Bartok.
Oh, really?
And he's made suggestions on each one that I've done, in terms of what kind of instruments he would like to hear. Yeah. I mean, there's marimba on the new one, and he had suggested that, and it worked out pretty good. I'm very happy with it. I'm very happy to. They're like an accomplishment, 3 accomplishments that feel good to me. So,
why Bartok, Messiaen, and especially why Berio? I mean, he's known for like this, I know that sequences for guitar. I checked that out from 87 or something like that.
Right. There's one for trombone also. There's one for all the instruments, I think.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, all the composers have been composers that he suggested.
Okay.
So, I mean, we usually have a little discussion about which composer, and I suggest 3 composers, and he suggests 1, and that's the one we usually go with. So,
okay.
Well, that's the way it's been.
And how was the band formed? Because the band is also, it's Gerald on drums. I mean, Cleaver and Sam Newsom and Marty Ehrlich, like all these incredible musicians.
Anytime I can get Gerald Cleaver is it's a boon for any project that he does.
As well.
I mean, he's just terrific and very, very sensitive to the music.
Yeah.
And I know I've known Marty Ehrlich for a while, long time actually. Haven't been really close, but we know each other, and we really haven't played a lot together. The same with Sam Newsom. Jim Puglisi is playing marimba, and he was on the Messiaen also playing drums and percussion. And Ellen Christie doing the vocals, who I've known a long time. And I have a lot of texts. There's a lot of text of Berio speaking about music and politics and art and whatnot. So I have those texts interwoven in the pieces. Some of the, not every piece, but some of the pieces. And a little bit of poetry of my own that she drew on and included in some of the pieces. So, yeah. So, and all the poems and quotes from Berio are in the CD liner notes. So.
Oh wow, super! Yeah, I'm looking forward to hear that one. I tried to find it, but I couldn't find it yet.
You should be able to find it now.
Now, okay, now it's okay, cool. Yeah. But otherwise, you mentioned Marty, and there was also a record you did, Soundpad of Mulhau's Richard.
Oh, right. Music. Yeah.
And I listened to that one, and Mulhau had all these. Craig Harris played trombone with him, and George Lewis, of course, and all these guys.
Yeah. Right.
Were you familiar with Mulhau's music already before, or?
Oh yeah, for sure, a long time. And I knew Mulhau a little bit from just seeing him at concerts and whatnot. And doing that project was the first time I actually, because he rehearsed that band while he was still alive a couple years before the recording. And the recording he had already passed. But that was the first time I got to work with him when we did it the first time. And he was just great. And then we did some open rehearsals in New York that I was part of. And he's just fantastic. I mean, he's somebody also who takes everything, you know, all kinds of sensibilities and brings it in. You know, whatever he's heard gets translated into his music. So
yeah, that's so beautiful.
Great to work with too. Just great to work with.
Yeah, because like, you know, he was doing stuff already, I guess, when you were still a teenager and, you know.
Oh yeah.
Early 70s, late 60s, you know. Like
oh yeah. He was already well known in those days.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you, you know, when I listened to your playing, I did know that then I read you were a student. I mean, you played with Roswell Rudd. You did that record together, which is beautiful. And but you were also a student of Graham Moncur and Jimmy Napper. And I wanted to ask you, how did these three people, who were like incredible figures on their own, of course, influence your style? And how was it like studying with them or had lessons with them?
Well, with Roswell, I've done a few records with Roswell. There's a trombone. He had a band with 3 trombones and tuba, Bob Stewart, and Barry Altschul. And for a time, it was Henry Grimes playing bass.
Oh, man.
And then Roswell did 1 or 2 records of mine. I can't. I don't know.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
There's a few. There's a handful of them out there, but Roswell was my first inspiration for approaching the trombone like I do. And I was just a kid in school, 10 years old, playing the trombone, you know, in the band. I was very shy, very quiet. And when I was 15, I just happened to get this, you know, I started getting interested in jazz. And then I bought this record at my local record store. And it was live in San Francisco, and Roswell, Archie Shepp was on that, Beaver Harris. And I just was blown away by how he was approaching his solos. It was just like, wow, he's just like reaching for the sky, coming from out of left field. And it just turned all my synapses on. So that's, and then when I grew up in New Jersey. So when I moved to New York, I heard there was free lessons through Jazz Interactions, which was an organization that was around in the 70s. And I went to every class for a couple of years and maintained that contact with him over the years. And then when Roswell couldn't be there, I think it was like on Tuesday afternoons, when Roswell couldn't be there, Gratian was there. Gratian was the sub. And, you know, I thought, well, this is amazing. He could have got anybody, Mr. No Name or somebody, you know, but Gratian was there. And Gratian had an awful lot to offer in terms of teaching. So he has, I think it's very technical, but he had, you know what alternate positions are. So he had us play bebop tunes in alternate positions, like confirmation. Instead of playing up here,
really? Oh wow!
Yeah, so I play it up here, which is like 2, 3, bop, bop, but you know, like that. We'd be all the way out here. You can't see my arm; it's all over here.
Sure.
So it would be like in 6th, 7th, and 5th position, and it dawned on me that by doing that, I got more of my body involved in how I was playing and how I was improvising, and that just stuck with me, man. So that was pretty. It was pretty a miracle that, you know, I came across that, you know. Yeah. Jimmy Nepper was another story. I love Jimmy Nepper because again, I you know, guys that are different, not doing
he was incredible.
Usual. I mean, he was amazing, and I got this. I don't know. I took like maybe 10 or 12 lessons with him. He lived on Staten Island.
Okay.
Yeah, but we would play like Bach cello duets together, or
man.
Yeah. And but his thing with me was always, you don't want to play this music. You don't really want to play this music, man.
He took this angle. Okay,
yeah. Every lesson he said that. So after a while, I said, well, I want to play this music. Maybe I don't want to take lessons from him. So, but I mean, he was a unique individual, and I enjoyed the time I spent with him. So, yeah.
Well, your move to New York, like, which was mid-70s, I guess.
Yeah, it was like 75. Yeah.
How was this like for you? Like, I mean, entering from Jersey, I mean, okay, it's not such a big distance, but still, like, you know, musically or the scene wise, who were the first contacts and people that you actually encountered and started playing with?
Yeah, I first got a gig in New York through the Village Voice. I don't know if you remember the Village Voice.
Yeah,
it
sure.
was a free
sure.
newspaper. And they used to have ads in the back, like music, you know, well, we need a trombone player for this band or a guitar player for that band and whatever. It's always just little classified ads. So I answered one of them, and I got a gig with this band. Actually, I got a couple of gigs. My first salsa gig was through the
seriously. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I didn't. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So that's how I entered playing in New York professionally for the first time. And I was like 19, 20 years old. Wow. And I ended up moving in with the drummer from one of those bands, and we all loved jazz. I mean, everybody was, you know, listening to jazz, and we went to a bunch of places, but we would jam at in the basement of his house where I lived. I lived with him, so it was like downstairs, and there was a piano player, some you know, avant-garde saxophone players. Ken Simon, I don't know if you know Ken Simon's name, but he was part of that whole thing. Anyway, that's how I started, and then from there, I, you know, just going around playing sessions and whatnot. I just met people, and you know, they would invite you here or there, or, you know, start getting gigs.
Who were like the most I mean, like everyone, like you played wedding gigs, salsa gigs, and all that, of course. But who were like more the first steps into the improvised scene? Which people were really important? I mean, in the beginning for you?
Yeah, I would say well, Ken Simon, who was a saxophone player who played with Cecil Taylor briefly, and David Wortman, who was a bass player who played with Charles Tyler and a lot of people, and I didn't really go into the music this kind of music full time then. I was really, because I grew up in the New York area, I kind of wanted to see the country. So I got some gigs doing like Broadway shows and whatnot for a bunch of years. And so I saw a lot of the country. So when I came back and I was finished with that, I ran into Michael Marcus on the subway, saxophone player. Yeah. And he invited me to Jemeel Moondoc's band.
Oh, really? Oh.
Yeah. So that's how I met Jemeel and William Parker.
Oh, that's the connection with William also. Oh,
yeah. That's where I first met William then. That was like 1990, I think.
Oh, okay.
Maybe a little before that, but around 1990, yeah. So that's how I started there. And then I met all these other guys too, you know, Tim Berne, Joey Barron, Herb Robertson actually brought me into that circle a little bit. And so little by little, and I took a day job for a while too, because I didn't want to do, I was playing with Ken McIntyre, and he said to me, you know, if you want to make money, you can always make money. You can clean bathrooms, you can pump gas, drive a cab, and I've done all those things. So, but I got what he was saying. The focus should be on this music. So I took like an office job for almost 10 years, proofreading, and I don't do that now. But I had to get away from those other kinds of you know, weddings and that kind of stuff. You know, he really convinced me that I should do that. Yeah, and I did. So.
Yeah, it's hard to do it both. It's impossible.
No, it
kills your spirits. I mean, to do that.
It does, and after a day of doing that, you're tired. Also, you don't feel like doing anything.
Exactly. So. I've done one wedding, no, two actually, when I was 19, and it was really well paid. And I said after, to the leader, I was like, man, I really apologize. Thanks for everything. Like, but I just cannot do that. I'm, you know,
yeah.
it's just.
Yeah,
I also did like translation and stuff before, you know, and everything. Just
yeah. You do what you do to survive, you know.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. You mentioned Joey, like, and I will never forget the first time I heard that tune "Blinky" on Tongue and Groove.
Okay. Yeah.
You know, I don't know, I love that
Yeah.
one. And Ellery, you know, it's incredible.
Yeah.
And how did that story with Joey begin? What and that band? It's such a beautiful trio. I mean,
Well, again, this is through Herb Robertson.
Herb. Okay.
Herb brought me on a band. He had a really nice band that he arranged all Bud Powell tunes for.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I'm not, Robin Eubanks is on the record, but they went to Europe and Robin had other commitments. So I ended up doing the gig, and it was that band had, well, it was Herb Robertson, Brian Lynch. I think it was either Joe Daly or Bob Stewart, depending on what day it was, Art Barron. And Joey Barron was the drummer on that band. Yeah. So that's how he heard me. And then he wanted to start this crazy band, which he did. And it was, we did 3 records and a bunch of tours for about 4 years. And it was nice. It was fun. It was fun.
Yeah. Did you already go to Europe before, like with someone? Like I guess you did, right? Or jazz-wise? I mean, or how was that like?
No, I did. The first time I ever went to Europe was to play music, and I think that was the time. That was like 1987.
Ah, okay.
That's the first time I went to Europe, and I went to Southfelden.
Oh yeah,
and Villisau. Yeah. So that's actually the first time I ever went to Europe, which is really great, you know.
Yeah, sure.
Play music, yeah. So
for improvised music, yeah. And then you mentioned Berne also. You know, I love "Pace Yourself," the record. I mean, you know, I'm such a Mark Ducray fan, of course. So, and I you know, he's one of the most underrated guitarists, I think. You know.
Yeah, he's terrific.
And but playing with Tim, you know, there's Mark Dresser and Bobby Pravitt and Herb. Incredible lineup. How was that experience like for you playing Tim's music? You know, I did one tour with Tim and playing my music, and I'm such a fan of his stuff. And how did you encounter his project? Like, because he has quite complex compositions, and then going into open stuff and all that. How was that experience?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what a good experience was when I was in. I went to college in Jersey City for 1 year. And the jazz band leader there was into Don Ellis, you know, and he had all these crazy time signatures with his big band, and it was really, you had to really focus and really. So a lot of that really helped me to deal with like somebody like Tim's compositions, which change meters, and then, you know, there's you know, the writing stops here, then it goes down there, then you got to go back over here, and so I was kind of prepared for that. So and a lot of musicians write like that too, you know, kind of complicated, not in the regular notation style. You're freezing every once in a while. Am I freezing also?
No, you're okay. You're cool.
Oh, okay. If you like freeze for a second, then you're cool. All right. Anyway, that was challenging, but I enjoyed playing it, and there was ample solo space for us, for everybody. So, and it was fun, and I enjoyed, of course, being with Herb was fun, and I enjoyed Bobby Previtt's drumming, you know, also, and it was great. It was a good experience.
Yeah, because when I look at your 90s, you know, like also the records I have you at home at least, and you know, the stuff you've done, it's like you exploded, I think, creatively, and also becoming a band leader. I think, you know, that Out and About with Roswell, that's the record I meant, you know. Right. How was it for you, like becoming a band leader? I mean, did you already like lead bands in the 80s before, or like?
I only a couple of bands, and it wasn't, I was on Lionel Hampton's band for a year, and I had some of those guys in that band. We had like a little society band on the side. So when we were in New York, I kind of organized that a little bit. So was my only real band leading experience. So it was different. I mean, so I'm still learning about it. So, which is a great thing about this music. I mean, you got a lifelong journey of learning and a quest, and it's revelatory at times and enlightening. It's great. But it was a pretty easy transition. I just said, okay, you got to do this, you got to do that. But I realized after a while you have to kind of hone different things and different projects for the players that you have. And kind of like let their how they improvise, really come out and shine, so to speak. And that's just a little bit extra amount of work you got to do, along with everything else.
Yeah,
as you probably know. So
yeah, how did that out and about happen? Actually, I mean, when was the moment that you? I know you did observations before, but like kind of those hand in hand, almost like. How did those moments happen for you becoming a band leader? Actually,
well, I was very lucky. I mean, that Observations was a duo record that Chris Kelsey, soprano player, very good soprano player. We were getting together every week, and he had contacted Bob Roosh upstate, and he said, "Yeah, come on up." So we did that record, and Bob Roosh was very open to me, and he said, "You got anything else you want to do? Just let me know." And I said, "I got to do something with Roswell." I mean, I had been in contact with Roswell all along because when because I think we did that record in '96 or something. But when I started going to Europe a lot, I would call Roswell from the airport, just to ask him his advice or some encouraging word, and just to hear his voice,
That's
and
beautiful.
and it was nice. It was became like a little thing that we did, and that's how I felt free to ask him to come and do this, and he did, and it was a good thing for him to do, because he ended up doing 2 CDs for them for Simp with the Herbie Nichols music, who he was very close to Herbie Nichols, and that kind of like sort of brought him back into people's awareness again, I think.
But you've done like so many records for Simp also. I mean, like you seem to have like with Lou Grassi such a also tight connection.
Yeah, we do. We don't play so much anymore now. But back then, at that time, we definitely did, because I knew him from school, actually, from Jersey City State College, and he was a little older than me, but we were running in the same sort of avant jazz circles at that school.
I wanted to ask you, how did those records happen? Because like, you have like Marshall Allen or Joseph Jarman or Perry Robinson. Like, how did those groups happen? Like, how did you decide who's coming? And
oh, you mean those groups that Lou had?
How did those records happen?
I mean, he was asking those people.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I knew Perry pretty well. I really didn't know Joseph Jarman or Marshall. But I guess he just reached out and asked them.
Yeah, it's Wilber, Morris, and Perry, and you. I think it's on all of them, and then like all these different comments coming by. It's like really, it's like sounds terrific.
Yeah. No, those were fun. Those were fun to do, and just to be with those people too.
Yeah,
Wilber was great. Wilber Morris was terrific. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he was the regular bass player in that band.
Yeah. That's beautiful. Yeah. Otherwise, I wanted to ask you, about the long list of the long distance improviser, solid trombone, because it's like, I've spoken to, Robin Eubanks and Samuel Blaser, Niels Wogerm, all these players who've, all of you are masters of the instrument, and Samuel Blaser, he said, like, there's always, when you play solid trombone, this Albert Mangelsdorf sitting on you behind somewhere. At least for the European guys, I guess. You know?
Yeah, right. I would say for the European guys.
And how was your approach to playing solo trombone? And like, how do you see this heritage? I mean,
well, I think I probably, my inspirations for that were George Lewis and Paul Rutherford.
yeah.
And I'm probably leaving somebody out, but those two are really the reasons that I thought I should really try this and do it. I don't do enough of it, and it is a little bit frightening. I don't have Albert Mangelsdorf. I've got every other musician, hundreds of them, looking over my shoulder. But I just decided to go in. I was also going to school. I went back to college. It was like 2016. I was 59 years old. And I went back to school.
Oh, wow, man. Wow.
And one of the courses that they would give me credit for is, I forget what they call it exactly, but by doing the solo record, I got like 8 credits or something towards my degree. So I said, I've always wanted to do one. And Ed Hazel in Boston, a writer in Boston, had been encouraging me for a long time to do it. And I said, okay. I got everything was set up just right. And it's the only self-produced record I did. It's on my label, Swello Records, which is one record on the whole label. So that's it.
So far, come on.
So far.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So I mean, it's the same way I would approach improvising with a band. You know, I just know. I mean, I'm probably maybe thinking a little bit more about the space, the studio space, and you know, my trip on the subway to get there or whatever. You know, you just try to not really. I didn't try anything specific that I'm going to do this, you know, or I'm going to follow this harmonic thing.
Yeah.
You know, I think there's a lot of variety in it. There's melodies and there's alternate techniques. And
techniques,
stuff, so,
sure.
Yeah.
So. Did you ever do solo trombone gigs also? Like,
I did, but again, I think I don't have my Albert Mangelsdorf, but you know, I got like you know, Charlie Parker over here, you know, other William Parker over here, you know, all these other guys looking over me. So I really should do more of it. It's challenging for trombone, I think.
Yeah, it's so really, intimate also. Like solo with the one instrument. It's like scary almost.
I heard Julian Priester do a solo concert in New York a bunch of years ago, and before he started, he said to the audience, he said, "Now, you know, doing this, when a musician does this solo, he is really making himself vulnerable to people, you know." And I thought, that's so true. I mean, you're really opening up yourself, and people are looking inside you, like, you know. So it's still for me a little bit intimidating, but I think if I just did more of it, I'd be more relaxed.
Yeah. It's a different beast, you know, like a piano player or a guitarist. It's different playing solo, but like, you know, solo trumpet, like Dave Ballou, he did a solo trumpet record or concerts, and all these guys, like Peter Evans does that, or you know. And it's
Peter Evans,
yeah, it was like incredible. But it's just like solo horn, like, or you know, trombone, like it's scary, man. It's like it is. It is. It's intimate, like you said. You reveal yourself. It's But I wanted to ask you about your experience. We mentioned William Parker, and you know, Flowers Grow in My Room. It's such a beautiful record, and Roy Campbell, and Rob Brown, and all these guys. I mean, how was your experience playing with William, and when did you first start playing with him? Like the first gig, do you remember that? Like,
I remember. Well, I was just saying before, it was on Jemeel Moondoc's. Jemeel had a band called Just Grew, JUS apostrophe Grew, which is from a book. Oh God, I'm forgetting the author's name, but it's from a book called Mumbo Jumbo, And just grew is the disease that people get, and they can't stop moving to music. You know, it's a really great book. Oh man, I can't remember the author's name. Anyway, that's when I met William on that band, and I met Roy Campbell on that band also. And Rob didn't play in that band, as far as I remember. But you know, my go-to bass player, as they say, or William's just great. I mean, he brings everything to a gig or a studio session. He brings himself completely. And you know, you've spoken with him. He's got he's a philosopher. He's got stories. You know, if you're on the road with him, it's like you're riding 6 hours. It feels like 20 minutes with all the stories.
Man,
you know, so he's just great. It's just great to play with. Very easy to play with. You know, and he's done. You know, he's done my bands too, and as well as me doing his bands. And he'll just bring something just a little bit more special than maybe what I wrote. And there was one time I didn't even have a bass line, and he came up with a bass line on this at the session, like without even, he just started doing it. And I said, oh, well, that's perfect, you know. And no, he's really one of the special ones.
He definitely is.
No doubt.
Yeah. Did you guys ever talk? You said you write poetry also, right?
Yeah.
Like, and I know he does as well. And I studied poetry.
Yeah.
I studied American poetry and translation, and I'm really into that. And did you guys ever discuss poetry or how to write poetry also, like, or exchange ideas about that, or not really?
Not really. I mean, we've heard each other's poetry, and
interesting.
You know, I mean, some pieces that he has with his poetry. I have some pieces also in my poetry, and he's always encouraging. And I tell him, you know, there's something that strikes me, you know, but we don't really talk about technique or anything. Just kind of like, well, that was really fantastic. I love this particular thing or something, you know. And you know, we don't get into technique.
How did you dive into poetry, by the way? Like,
well, that was really from Steve Dalachinsky. Do you know him?
No.
He's
just by name.
He was a jazz poet around New York. He would come to like people's gigs. Like if there was 4 gigs that night, he would go to all 4 gigs. He would come to your gig, and he was putting a book together with poems by musicians, and he invited me, and so that. You know, I was a little flattered by that. I never really wrote poetry before that, not with any, you know, desire to really do it. And it just sparked something in me, and I enjoyed it, and I liked the results. And the book came out; it was nice. And there was a couple other little small publications that I got in, but I really don't push that. You know, I mean, I write, and then like on some. Lately, I've been using poetry with my music, and I'll use some poetry on liner notes sometimes, or in a booklet, you know, for a CD.
Yeah. But
no, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, if you did you check out like all these, you know, Frank O'Hara and John Ashbery and like all these New York poets, like Michael S.
Harford, of course, man.
Like everything. You do that?
Oh yeah, all of it.
Wow.
And I don't feel maybe in a way it's good. I don't feel like I didn't study poetry like you did, but I know the names, and I know a lot of their work, and I get their books and read them and whatnot.
Oh, really?
But yeah. Ferlinghetti, Yeats, I like Keats, you know, all of it, all over the world.
That's beautiful.
There's a Czech poet I'm blanking on now. You're from Slovenia, right?
Slovenia,
yeah.
A Czech poet. Oh shit! I mean, I only know Milan Kundera, you know, the novelist.
Oh right. Well, there's one Miloš. Maybe he's Polish.
Oh, Miloš, Czesław Miloš, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah, sure. He's a monster. Yeah, he's incredible. Yeah.
And there's, I mean, you find somebody new almost every other day. I mean, somebody that's maybe not even so famous, but you just like, oh wow, I like that, you know. So
yeah, it's like music. It's
yeah.
so much quality out there, and so much unknown quality also. That's bizarre.
Yeah.
Well, you have to send me some. Please send me some poems, Steve. I mean, I'd love to read them if you can.
Well, if you go to www.steveswell.com,
you have them on your website.
There's some poems. Yeah, there's like maybe 4 or 5 poems on my
okay,
website.
Cool. I'll check them out. Okay, cool. I'll check them out. I just wanted to ask you also. I listened to the Live in Tel Aviv and Copenhagen records with Brutzmann and Paul, and I saw Paul and Peter like live at least 10 times, during we're everywhere.
Yeah.
How was that experience like for you? Because, Peter is like 80 something, bursting with energy still, and Paul, of course. How did that happen?
I think the first tour, I did 3 tours and 3 records, and I think the first tour was we celebrated his 75th birthday. So this is a few years ago. I mean, not that, 5.
Yeah.
Not quite 10 years ago. And it was just somebody I thought I could play with, and I liked his, always loved his playing.
Yeah.
And I knew Paul, but I didn't know Peter, but I emailed him. And he emailed me back. He said, asking if he would like to play with Paul and me. And he said, yeah, I was somebody on his list that he wanted to play with.
Oh, wow, man.
So that was very flattering. And I loved it. I mean, I love his energy and the energy of Paul, of course. I mean, Paul just like, you could bounce off Paul all day playing.
He's incredible. Yeah,
it's amazing. And so, I loved it. And we did, I think the last one in Tel Aviv, I don't know what year that was, 18 or 19 maybe.
Yeah, something like that,
Yeah.
18.
And he's been kind of like well and then not well and playing and not playing. So I actually asked Paul about that about a month ago, if you think he would do it again, and he really wasn't sure. I should give him an email anyway,
Yeah.
See, but no, it's just somebody who always want to play. And I'm very happy with those records.
Oh, it's killer band, man.
Oh, man. It was so much fun to play in.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. It's like you've cooperated with, played with so many European improvisers and American. Yeah. Is there like a different way or approach you see or feel when you play, or not really? I mean, it's maybe a stupid question, but like, I don't know. If you listen to Peter sounds way different than any American players, or maybe.
Oh yeah. I mean, I don't consciously change anything about what I'm doing. I mean, I come in with a pretty clear mind of not any preconceived any idea. Even though I've heard Peter, on records and live for many years, all I knew it was going to be intense. That's all I knew about it, and it was. And I just, it was great because I could bounce off of him and bounce off Paul, and it all made sense. And then when Peter stopped a little bit, I could come out in front. I would stop, of course. He would come out in front, and there's nothing that I would say. I also played with Paul Dunmall, who.
Yeah, I love it, man. Yeah. Oh, really? Yeah. You did, really? When was that? When was that?
That was maybe 2019.
Really? Oh, wow.
Yeah, there's a record out. It's with Mark Sanders, of course. And yeah. And Paul plays a very, very kind of different way. And I was bouncing off him, and I was listening to a backup saying, well, that's very different than Brotsman, of course.
Oh, yeah, sure.
But I totally enjoyed that. It was just like, it was another thing. I mean, I guess it's like, I'm like a pinball machine. You know what a pinball machine is?
Sure.
So you're like, I'm bouncing off all these sounds that people are putting out, and then something hits me over here with a sound, and then I throw something else out that maybe correlates to that or makes me do something, and then somebody else responds to what I just did,
Yeah.
I mean, that's how I look at it. It's like a big pinball machine with lights going on and sounds and beeps and buzzes. So
that's beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, as far as Americans versus European, I think Europeans probably know more about American players than Americans know about European players. But
Yeah.
you know, we're coming around. We're coming around.
No, because it's like it's funny. I don't know, like you said, like we're in Europe. I'm aware of all the records, many records of the improvised scene that came in the 60s or 70s in the US.
Yeah.
But in Europe, you had Peter doing his free machine
Machine gun
in 68 already. And it was such a big movement, with all those good guys on that record. And
no, it's interesting because the politics of, like, the Germans, the East Germans, they had a thing that the politics was part of their music the same way it was for African Americans in the States.
Exactly.
So it's interesting. There's a correlation there. It's a correlation. I mean, most people.
The British scene also, which is completely different.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I love that. But it's all one big world of music, of course,
It is. It really is. And some people like to cut it down into this and that, and like, I can't. I'm too old for that stuff anymore, man.
No. It's just like, if you feel if like me, someone from Slovenia comes to New York, or when I came to New York the first time, I felt this, I don't know, this energy, this bustling, also in musicians,
Yeah.
And that's what I mean with this. If you feel the different vibe or like different energy with improvisers from Europe or Scandinavia, or maybe not anymore now, maybe it was different.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think people like Paul or the younger Europeans, they're very aware of the American history of the free jazz and everything that's going on. So it's not like isolated,
Yeah.
I mean, they understand that energy.
Just one last question, Steve, not to
Sure.
take too much of your time. Like, I also saw that you did something with Cecil Taylor, and William was so closely connected also to him. And what was your experience like with Cecil and working with him? How did that happen?
Well, I was in a large ensemble with him for a few years. I think we had like
it's a DVD out or something.
Oh yeah. It's a recording. There's a ton of audio stuff that someday we'll see the light of day. I mean, a ton of it for this band. He was calling it Orchestra Humane. It was originally I think it was called the Sound Vision Orchestra. It was associated with the Vision Festival.
The festival, yeah.
And Alan Silva took that band and we played. And then he sort of took the band a little further and started calling it Celestial Communications, like after the first band he had in the 70s, or whenever he did it the first time. And then Cecil sort of like, and I think it was a lot of the people who were like on the board of this, the band had like a board and a 5013C and everything. I was kind of on it for a little while. And they would ask different people, like Bill Dixon.
We
did something with him. But then Cecil kind of we did a bunch of stuff, a few things in Europe, played at Skopje.
Oh, really? Oh, man, seriously?
Yeah.
Oh, wow, Macedonia. Wow, beautiful.
Yeah, in 2002.
Really? Oh.
Yeah. And we did like week-long gigs in New York at Iridium, like 2 or 3 years in a row.
Wow.
And there's a ton of, I mean, I have a lot of it, a ton of recordings from that. I mean, all the recordings.
Oh, man, we need to hear that.
But that was great. I mean, it was a big ensemble, so there was a lot of personalities in there. So you really had to make sure you stood up and took your solo. Otherwise, somebody else was going to take it.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So you got to be fast.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Still, man. Yeah. Cool. Cool, Steve.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Dr. Jazz. Dr. Jazz.